So once again, thank you everyone for joining. This is our May 2022 customer panel. It's always so exciting to be here and be a part of this and get a chance to talk to you guys about various updates. So quickly talk about the agenda for today. We have some policy items around updates and feedback on things like RegEx and generic capabilities. And we also have some product updates from Azure Resource Graph. I will kick it off asking about RegEx. So we've heard a great amount of feedback from you guys, from various different customers around regex and the need for policy to support regex syntax within our definitions. We've heard a lot about how to use these mainly around naming conventions, right? You want to standardize how subscriptions are named or resource groups are named to include things like dev dash, location dash unique ID or whatever the sequence might be. We are investigating the different libraries in regex. As you guys know, there's a lot, and there's various different endpoints in which we start. So we want to make sure that we're looking at the correct ones and prioritize that. So you could see here we have a QR code that you can scan. We also have a ak.ms link, which I will put into the chat, asking two important questions. First, what are some examples of the regex syntax needed? Right. So what does that look like in regex? What would you like to enforce, or what are you enforcing today using some other mechanisms? And then also, other than named property or the name field on various resources, what other properties would you need regex validation for? I see that Shannon has posted the link on the chat. Feel free to fill that out now as we go through the call and talk about various other updates. We'll be checking that after the meeting, a couple minutes after, and then maybe we'll talk about it at the end during the Q&A if we get a chance to. But yeah, we really value your feedback, and we want to make sure we prioritize the libraries correctly. So we'd appreciate any feedback you could give us there. Cool. Next, I'll hand it off to Shannon.
Awesome, thank you. I just wanted to do a quick call out here. I had launched some investment discussions previously about documentation and portal pain points and investments. And so one of the things that has come up is it can be difficult to find what's changing in policy and how to find new features when they're released. A lot of times people are relying solely on this call. So one thing that we're going to be introducing here soon is a what's new page in our documentation. So you can go and take a look at any of the new and upcoming features offline on your own time. So keep an eye out for this. It's not released yet. We had a build experience that locked down our documentation pipeline, but this will be coming very soon. And I think this will be helpful for keeping people up to date. So on that note, I also wanted to say thank you to everybody who signed up for those investment discussions. We haven't had a chance to get to everybody yet, but thank you for those of you who made some time to chat with me. I think we got some really valuable feedback from those, and I think we have another idea in mind coming up. So I'm going to pass it over to Neha to talk about some other investments we're thinking of.
Cool, thanks, Shannon. And hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Wanted to also make the announcement that we are continuing to, make investments in policy that target Kubernetes clusters, and this investment's ever growing, spanning various features and various types of clusters. And we'd love to take you along on this journey and get your input as we continue to make these investments. And so we will be sending a form or something to get your information if you are interested in kind of influencing the journey, hearing more about it, and have a good understanding of Kubernetes within your environment. So keep an eye out for that. And again, just echoing Shannon's sentiment, thank you so much so far. I'll pass it on to the next speaker at this point.
I do want to address Ravi's question in the chat. It said there will be a link and overview about what's new. Correct. So it will be a new tab within our documentation that says what's new. We'll link it out from the overview blade, so you'll be able to see it there from the overview documentation. And we'll also include a link within the portal. So you'll be able to go from the portal and open up the doc to kind of make it easier. Cool. Next is for management groups. So we are thinking of a new concept around management groups, new feature concept, and our UX researcher has asked us for customer input. So if you're interested, if you're using management groups today and you're interested in learning about this new concept and interacting with kind of the prototype that's going around, you can complete the survey. I will post a link in the chat shortly. There's also a QR code there for you to scan and fill out the request on information just to schedule a meeting and talk about that. Cool. And then next, through Azure Policy and generic capabilities. So some of the customers, you guys might have heard of generic capabilities, generic references. It's kind of has multiple names and it's been talked about in various meetings, but it's never been talked about in this forum. So as you know, today we have a lot of different types of policies that span across different resource types. So let's say, for example, things like tags or hybrid compute, as this example shows, or private link, so on and so forth. These are the same properties or same functionality that are spread across different RPs. But right now in policy, what happens is you would have to create a new policy definition for each of those resource types in order to target it and assess it. So in this example here, you can see that for guest configuration, we have to make a complex condition in which it accounts for the various VM types and different image SKUs and image offers that are out there. We've started in this venture with the ARM team in order to create this concept of a generic capability. So saying if this is taggable, if this is able to be guest configured, if it has a private link or public network access or whatever these common properties are, let's just assess one definition on all of those applicable resource types to kind of clean up to clean up the amount of policy definitions and assess it on one. So that's generic capabilities, and that it's a generic capability across different resource types, and now you can enforce that through policy by referencing that generic capability. So the very important feedback that we need from you guys is, how do we want this generic capability syntax to look like within our policy definitions? So I'm gonna launch a poll here that talks about the different options, and please record which one you want. But let me talk through them a bit first. So first is in which we have a capability property similar to like field and value and such. It's something called capability in itself. And then once you define that capability, you'll tell us which one it is. So in this example, it's guest config enabled virtual machines. So target all those virtual machine types and SKUs and image offers. And then the following number is 0.1.1 is the version of that capability. Because as new resource types are added, we had to update that capability to include those new resource types and make sure that is up to date. And then that just equals to enabled. So we have enabled that capability, and now it would assess all of those applicable virtual machines. The alternate syntax in 2 basically doesn't create a capability field, but instead uses value. So this is the value, and then you have the bracket that says capability, in which then you specify what capability and the version within that. This asterisk could also be done here. It's just a different way of showing how you can show the version. So don't mind the asterisks. That could be done here too. And then the last, or option 3, is having it for field, and then doing field capabilities dot guest config virtual machine, and then specifically specifying, just as the alias does, what it is dot image offer. And then here we have to specify like Windows or like, you know, any of the other options. So those are the 3 options. Feel free to record. I'll give that a second to trickle in. And Marlo, yes. So diagnostic settings is one of the abilities, and it could really help in the amount of policy definitions that are out there around diagnostic settings. Cool. So it seems we have an overwhelmingly amount of option 1 is the preferred option. Would anyone from option 1 like to speak as to why option 1 is better, or why the other 2 you feel aren't as good?
Is this a test?
There's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, mine. Can you hear me? Hello,
Yes.
hello. Hey, this is Brooks. It really depends upon how the construct and where the construct can be used within a policy rule. I had situations where I needed to use various loop counters, where you're looping through lists of things, and some constructs, especially for tagging, some constructs allow you to use value, and some constructs allow you to use the field function, and some constructs don't. So it really depends upon how universal the use of this will be. If it's only used in the if statement and cannot be incorporated in some kind of counting loop, that could be problematic. So it's whatever works in terms of its most complete implementation. You could implement it as an alias. That's a 4th option that is not listed. You have listed an option 2 as a function, and it depends on how that function could be used in loop counters and stuff. So, yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
In terms of arguing for the title of capability,
Simpler.
I would just say that it's everything else in terms of a field corresponds with a data point that can be easily correlated to something back in the Azure. Whereas from what I've heard so far, this capability is going to be something a bit unique to describe a grouping of essentially capability, for lack of a better term, within the policy structure. So that kind of makes it unique to just the titling out in the policy definition, which I think justifies the use of a different term aside from field or value, as those correspond to other specific data points.
Actually, Ryan, you bring up a great point there. So one thing though is that other than the part that we are mentioning here in terms of the capability versus the value versus the field, the expression used in there of the guest config enabled virtual machine and how we express the version will actually make that consistent with our usage in other parts of the governance capabilities as well. So capability is something that we will support in ARG as well, for example, as well as ARM template deployments. And so we'll make that usage consistent.
I think that kind of leads into the second poll that I have, which I'm launching right now, around the version names. The question is, should we have the version defined with the capability name as it is here shown? or should we have that on a different property that must be specified? And if it's not specified, we would work off of that current latest version of the capability. So kind of repeat it once again. With the capability names means every time you have to tell us what the version number is and specify that? Or would it be better to have it as a separate property that if you do not define it, we'll just go off whatever is latest at that definition creation time? Yep, and I think we see here that the overall response is on a different property. Would someone like to speak on what? I'm interested to hear from the people that want it with the capability name. What do you feel is the value prop in having that?
It can be parameterized when it's a different property. So let's say I needed to support multiple versions or something. I don't know how it's going to play out in the long run, but it gives you that flexibility to parameterize it if it's a separate property.
I mean, to be fair, you could use a concat function to put it into a single string, but I agree. This will make it syntactically easier to understand.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you, everyone. Is there any, if there's any other comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to put them into the chat, and we can talk those over or go over them at the end of Q&A. I'm now going to pass it over to the Azure Resource Graph team.
Awesome. Thanks, Kemley. Hello, everyone. My name is Snehith, and today I'll go over what's new and what's coming soon in Azure Resource Graph. So I know we've got like a policy-obsessed audience here today, so I'll quickly just go over what Azure Resource Graph is. So it's 3 words, so a lot of times you'll hear us say ARG or just Resource Graph, so just bear with us there. Resource Graph allows you to query your resources across Azure using like KQL to accomplish everything from viewing like thousands of your resources at a time to quickly linking relationships between those resources and other critical things that you care about, right? So think like your tracked resources combined with your Azure policies, your advisor recommendations, and your security alerts. It's sort of all in one place. And for anyone who uses the Azure portal, a little known fact is we power the portal browse experiences. So if you don't know what ARG or Resource Graph is, again, I'll probably use them sort of synonymously. I'd really recommend you give it a try. So I just showed here, you can just go into portal, look up Resource Graph, and then hit that Explore button and follow along with some of what I'll be sharing today, or just start like messing around with it and playing around. We really hope you'll like it. So now let's just dig into what we have to offer. I'll share some updates and sort of what's coming up next. So again, yeah, I know a lot of people here love Azure Policy, so I thought sort of right away just share some of the policy resource updates. So again, I know there's a whole query there. Please don't try to like read sort of like every single line and break that down. Pretty simple query. All we're doing here is just taking a policy resources table, and then in that last line, joining it with our resources table. Again, if you're not familiar, don't worry about this too much. I really just made sure that first line, which is policy resources, is bolded size 20, because the entire point of the slide is just if you don't know what we are, you should just go into the Resource Graph Explorer, type in policy resources, and just do like a take 5 and just start exploring those tables. We really think you'll like what you see. You get to filter out all sorts of types. Like you see here, we did policy insights / policy states, but there's also policy definitions, policy assignments. You should just sort of explore and start refining your queries to get what you want. I'll go through like a short demo later, where I sort of run through the portal experience of Resource Graph Explorer, and then I can also share some helpful queries there to get started. Yeah, we can go into the next slide. Yeah, so another thing, sort of in the policy realm, is this authorization scope filter, which is new since the last time I presented, which is something you actually pass in when you make your request to Azure Resource Graph, and you can sort of see it bolded there at the bottom. Just an example here where we're passing in at scope and above, which means that you can get policy data for those two management groups you see below. One of the management groups is called management group, not milligram, because a lot of people say MG. Pretty bad joke, but the other MG is called MG1. So when you pass in that at scope and above, you're going to get your policy data for those two MGs that I specified there and their parents, right? You're not going to get data for anything that's below those management groups. Yeah, we can go on to the next one. Cool. So now this is sort of like going more deeper into the Azure Resource Graph realm, less onto the policy side. Before I even say anything about this, you should sort of know what pagination is in our domain. So it's essentially like whenever you're making multiple calls to a service and you're receiving like quote unquote multiple pages of results. So in Resource Graph, anytime you try to pull more than 1,000 rows at a time, you're going to need to make like consecutive requests where you're getting multiple pages, hence that term, right? So before, whenever you used our service, you would have to project the ID column. It was sort of this restriction that we had. And now you no longer have to do this. I put some caveats in there, but there's cases where that's not always the case. And I'll sort of show this in the demo later as well. But I thought like you might be thinking like if you're not familiar with this, you're like, why is this a big deal? But if you've used our service and you've started doing joins and stuff, you'll realize a lot of times you just want to get rid of the ID column, and then you'll realize pagination doesn't work. So this is really awesome for anyone who likes to join queries and they start messing up and they get confused, and it's just meant to help there and also just make things work. So yeah, we hope you try it and give us feedback and let us know what you think. So yeah. Yeah, so now, just a second, I'll just jump in with like a quick demo, sort of what's new. Give me a second. Let me share my screen. Cool. Okay, so this is the Azure. I hope you can see it. So this is something I'm using called the RC portal. So if you're, if you're trying this out, sort of in tandem while I am, if you just hit RC before your portal, you'll see this page. It's a pretty interesting view where you not only see like the table view, which is what a lot of you are used to, but you see the categories view. So this sort of helps you break down just like there's so many like resources here, and it can get a bit confusing. So sort of just meant to make that easier. Again, if you're new, wouldn't even sort of like start with this stuff. Really would recommend you start here, right, with the starter queries, where you just like hit open query and it gives you sort of like a quick explanation of what this query does, and you can just hit like shift enter or just run query. So in this case, I'll just hit shift enter and it'll run this and it'll give me a count. You can scope your queries to everything ranging from your entire tenant to a specific MG to a specific subscription. So yeah, let's, I guess I'll start showing you some stuff, and hopefully you like it. So let's switch to the table views here. I'm just more used to this. Let's switch to the tenant level. So this is all of like what I have access to in Microsoft. Again, I'm not going to try to show anything that I can't. So I'll just do a project name, type, location, and do a take 5, right? So this is pretty simple, just like projecting 5 resources. Now let's see something more interesting, which is like how many queries do I have access to? And I see 1,800, right? So before, if we wanted to get, say, like what we had before, which was the name, type, and location, and we want to just output it all, we wouldn't be able to do it with just these columns, right? We would need to also have the ID column just to paginate past those first 1,000 records. So now we don't need that anymore. Basically, we can just run this and then paginate that way. So here, let me just do type location, run this. Let's take time, and then you can sort of see that there's 1,000 records here. This is 1,000, and then behind the scenes, like Portal is essentially doing what you would do using any other client or the REST API you can think, where it's just making that next page request, and it's pulling 821 records here. So that's sort of the scenario. Obviously, this is very bare bones. You probably wouldn't run this for the sake of getting something super insightful from just this. It's just sort of meant to demonstrate what you could use it for as your queries get more interesting and complicated. So great. So now switching topics a bit, actually. Just overall in the resource graph realm, a big piece that we're invested in recently is surfacing RBAC data. So that's things like role assignments and role definitions to you in a really easy, scalable way. So we're hoping that if we do this well, you'll be more equipped to build a more secure organization with agility on your side, right? Like we know there's all sorts of scenarios. You come from all sorts of backgrounds, and there's really cool things that you could do with this data. So there's something I'd like to share today that's exclusive for now to everyone who's here today. Hopefully you're still awake, at least just for this part. It's called the authorization resources table. So this table actually doesn't show up on this left side. There's a few. I'll share like another one later. But like this is something you can just sort of mess around with and try out. So you can do authorization resources. And then again, in this one, we could do like a take 5, and it'll show you 5 role assignments. Like right now we have role assignments data here. And I mean, I'm familiar with this, so I can sort of quickly just show what you can pull from this table. It's restricted to role assignments for now, but we're going to be adding role definitions in pretty soon. And it's exactly sort of what you expect if you were to do a get. So instead of doing single gets or collection gets on all your role assignments, you can just pull it all from ARG. And the real goal here, obviously, you might be thinking like, okay, great, you have role assignments. Like, why do I care? Is the real goal is to make like functions and things that you can use to actually do assessments, right? Like that's what we want to hear from you. And that's what I want to get feedback on later, actually. So you can see this, this is 2,000, more than 2,000 results. Again, like another great example of being able to actually page this data into 3, because it's 1,000, and then 286. But you can do something more interesting, like actually extracting this role definition ID, right? You can do again, you have to do a toString because this is like a dynamic properties bag. You do properties.role definition ID. To pull that role definition ID out, you can do principal type to pull out the principal type. And this is more of like telling you whether it's a user or a service principal. Again, like the result of these queries is everything that you have access to, right? Like when you're using the portal or you're interacting with the management APIs that Azure provides in any way, it's restricted to what you have access to. So that's what this is doing behind the scenes as well. And the more interesting one is this, right? Principal ID. This is sort of, I'll include a link to a survey later. And what we really want to dig into with your feedback and even just getting on calls with some of you is to figure out how we can use this field and what else you're looking for here, where you can actually do here. For now, you can do principal ID. And I know what my principal ID starts with. I don't want to like sort of dox anyone else in our organization, so I'll just do mine. So I can do like, I know my principal ID starts with F8F because who doesn't know that, right? And yeah, so these are some of the role assignments that I have. And you can sort of see like my principal ID showing these are all like at that user level, obviously, because I said I knew this was my principal ID. But we want to make it easier for you to not just query this, but also like, do evaluations or figure out like, who has access to what. Like there's sort of this realm of scenarios that are possible, and we want to hear back from you. So, but more on that later. So let me stop sharing my screen now.
Well, what's missing from this and it's a critical piece, and that is I need the email address of that identity. When it's a user identity, I need to know who it is. And that's sitting over in Azure Graph, i.e. AZ-AD, and I need that information. I can't even develop a policy to validate that the email addresses are being used when you do role assignments. I need to know who that principal is.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brooks, and that's a problem we're trying to solve now. So yeah, like we're thinking exactly sort of what you said. Like either we need to do that integration with just like Azure AD to pull that information, because currently we're kind of facing some blockers on and sort of some pushback just on being able to surface that within our product. Again, that's like directly identifiable information that like ties back to you. So that's sort of where we're trying to think through things, and that's why sort of I'll like in that survey I share, we're looking to hear back from people like you on the best way to sort of do that, because we sort of have all sorts of different things in our heads, and we want some clarity on the best way to do it. So yeah, looking forward to hearing from all of you on this. This is sort of just like the phase one of this, and yeah.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
quite a bit of questions on the chat. So I just wanted to start with, I think the one that started off with a lot of the conversation is from Marlo. Does authorization resources also get PIM eligible role assignments?
Of questions on authorization resources. That's actually great. Means it's something that people have been waiting for and need to query on. So as Snehit mentioned, this is kind of the first iteration. We always need to start with something, and at this point, we're just gonna start like basically being able to query just a role definition, role assignment. But in the next iterations, that's where we're going to have more, so that you'll actually be able to find out exactly, like really around what is, hey, who, like at the given scope, who are the users who have access to, or what kind of access they have. At this point, it's only at the role definition and role assignment, but and that's what we have the like the feedback, the survey from Snehit, that we would love to hear what are the next set of things as a priority, so that we can iterate on those in our next phases.
Yeah, well, we're just looking forward to you trying this new table out, giving us feedback on it. Yeah, again, it's a work in progress, hence the sort of exclusivity that we have here to this small audience. We're looking forward to making it great. So can we go to the next slide? Yeah, so here's that feedback survey. I'll paste the link in the chat as well. But here we can just go on to the next one. I want to be, because I know, like, I think ARN is next. So yeah, so this was sort of just, I wanted to let you know that if you're feeling overwhelmed, you saw that like demo, and you saw that table view sort of at the end there on the left hand pane, and you're feeling confused. That's completely normal. There's so much data in Research Graph that's split across so many tables that it feels really daunting at times. I mean, I'm a PM on ARG, and I feel this all the time too. So I guess it's sort of sometimes just part of working on things in cloud. But yeah, the good thing is you can search for what you want, and you can sort of narrow it down to the resource types you care about. So and then we're always open to listening to your feedback. So yeah. I got one slide left, and then yeah, I promise this is my last slide. So this is just sort of to quickly run through what's coming up next in Resource Graph land. So on top of that role assignments, role definitions feature that I shared, other things that we're planning to do include easing the current restrictions and paying around when you're trying to do cross-table joins. I don't know if some of you have tried some of these interesting scenarios where you're joining across 3 tables. Well, you'll write this really complex query, you'll try it out. It's working in Portal, and then you'll try to do it with the SDK, and you'll hit like a join error. That's because we have different configurations set across different clients, and we're trying to ease that pain there. So you will see fewer weird limits, and ideally be able to power your automation and your systems better this way. So the other things that we're going to add include like VM instance view for some of our power users who are just looking at virtual machines data within the resources table. that properties bag is super valuable. Like we currently have things like power state in there, and that's sort of all additional to what you would just get from doing a regular get on a VM. So we're going to be adding VM instance view there, and also for VMSS. Other things include like web app config, which has been a really highly requested type that we support. We are adding that and usage data in the coming months. So yeah, there's a lot to be excited about and look forward to. We're looking forward to sharing more with you the next time we meet. And with that said, thank you for listening and being patient. I hope you're still awake. Thank you for all those questions. I didn't expect to see that many about PIM, but I'm excited to respond to all those questions and get back to you. So now I'll hand it off to Supriya, who's going to present on Azure Resource Notifications, or at least I think it's Supriya. I hope I'm right about that.
Hey, Snehit. Yes, you're right about that. Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Supriya. I am a PM on Azure Resource Notifications team. We work very closely with ARG. So basically, ARN is a short for Azure Resource Notifications. So we are Azure's unified notifications hub for internal resource providers and services to publish, discover, and consume resource change notifications. So until now, we have been like, our publishers have been first party and our subscribers have also been first party. And one of our major publishers is ARM, and one of our major subscribers is ARG. So what we are doing is we are coming out with a new capability called System Topics. We are building this capability on what Event Grid is currently providing, the Event Grid System Topics. And through this capability, we are now going to start surfacing the notifications for all the resources which are flowing through ARM to all our external partners and customers, basically third-party customers. So we are super excited to be able to get this capability to private preview sometime early next month, probably in the first week. And so I'm taking this opportunity to invite you all to be a part of that private preview. So if I may request you to go to the next slide. Thank you. So what are some of the main benefits, the key benefits of this capability? Like I mentioned, we are able to now surface notifications to all our external customers. So if you want to subscribe to notifications for, say, virtual machines, or for IP addresses or disks or network interfaces, for all of these resource notifications which are flowing through ARM, you will now be able to subscribe to those notifications using this capability that we are providing. So essentially, what this means is that if you want to receive notifications for, say, virtual machine create, or if the virtual machine has moved, right? Or if a virtual machine has been deleted or an IP address has been created. In all these cases, since these notifications are already flowing through ARM, you can now subscribe to these notifications on your end for your workflows. And the scope of this private preview right now is in terms of the user experience, it is basically on the PowerShell front. The portal experiences will be enabled later during public preview, and and the other portion of the scope is in terms of the level at which we're surfacing the notifications. So in this case, all the notifications that you will receive will be for the subscription in which you will be creating this particular system topic. So the other so how is ARN helping, or how is ARN bringing in the advantages for this capability is by providing payload for the notifications. Even today, if you go to the system topics, which are available via Event Grid, you will be able to subscribe to these resource notifications, but the payload that you receive in that case will be related to security claims. But if you want to know, like, what is the state of the resource and the properties of the resource, now with the capability that we are coming up in private preview, you will be able to receive that information. Now, having that information, you will be also in a position to filter out those notifications based on, say, properties like the location, like resource group, if you want to like filter it down specifically to a given resource type as well. So these are some of the additional capabilities that will be that come in as a part of this private preview. So yeah, so this was like a quick brief. We are working internally to enable this very soon in Canary, and we will have the list of steps that can be followed and PowerShell to consume these notifications. So yeah, please reach out to me. My email is on the slide. It is sdikshit@microsoft.com for any further questions that you may have here. And I will post the link for the survey that we created here for people who are interested in this capability. And if they would like to join us in the private preview, we would love to know more. And if there is something specific that you would want to subscribe to in terms of notifications, or if there is any feedback or anything for us, we would be very happy to learn from you. So that was my little spiel about what's coming up. And yeah, thank you for your time again. I'll hand it back to Kemli.
Thank you, Supriya. So I lost my mouse there. Okay. So last but not least, if you have any other ideas for Azure Governance for anything you heard today, Azure Resource Graph, ARN, policy, management groups, generic capabilities, our ideas page is available to post. So this used to be user voice, but now we've moved to ideas. But it's the same concept. You can post an idea, you can vote on ideas, and you can categorize it by the different topics within governance as well. So I will, before I open the floor to Q&A, okay, Supriya posted the chat. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I will now open the floor to Q&A, but I will stop the recording. So